This is the FM Gold channel of All India Radio. In the program News Analysis, now we bring you a discussion on India-Israel bilateral relations. The participants are Ranjan Mathai, former Foreign Secretary, and Vineet Wahi, journalist.
The Indo-Israel relations are set to reach a new high with the two countries signing agreements on water resources management and agriculture. It may be recalled Israeli President Reuven Rivlin is in India currently on an 8-day visit. One-to-one meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in which these two agreements were signed, and they also made a joint statement. Mr. Ranjan Mathai, how do you view the current visit of Israeli President to India?
Well, it's a very welcome visit. It's been a long time since the Israeli head of state has been to India. I recall the excitement when the first Israeli presidential visit took place. That was Mr. Ezer Weizman many years ago, perhaps around 20 years ago. So it is good to have the Israeli president here. It's a mark of the strength of our relationship, and I think it will further consolidate the strong ties between our two countries.
Will it have any impact on the India relations with the Middle East countries? Any fears, to what extent?
Well, overall, the policy of our government has been that we would like to have very strong relations with Israel, while at the same time we continue to have very, very strong, very deep and extensive relations with the Arab countries in West Asia. Certainly, I think this visit will be part of that same policy and part of that same trend.
You being an ex-envoy to Israel, what do you think has changed over the course of past so many years and the past 2 years that India and Israel seem to be coming a little more closer?
I think the relationship between our two countries has been growing very steadily. I do not know if one can categorize any particular period. Just to give you an example, when we established diplomatic relations in 1992, the total trade turnover between our two countries was something like $200 million. By the time I went there as ambassador in 98, and when I was leaving in 2001, it was close to $1 billion. That's 5 times growth. Today, it is almost $5 billion. So that, you can see this has been a steady upward progression in trade relations and in all across the board. I think the one or two interesting things which have taken place in the last few years is the acceleration of high-level visits. Our president paid a visit to Israel, as you recall, and the growth in high technology spheres has also been very, very noticeable.
The figures suggest that trade between two countries stagnated at the level of $4.5 million since 2012. How do you view this?
You might recall that global trade itself has not been growing in the years after 2008. And in fact, in the last 2 years, India's overall export performance has not been very great. In the sense that because of world market conditions, our exports have in fact declined in some months and have stabilized in others. I think the opportunities for trade will continue to exist. One of the factors that causes an upward-downward movement in Indo-Israeli trade is the global market for diamonds. You might be aware that diamonds constitute a very large part of both the import basket as well as polished diamonds as part of the export market. There could be a number of factors, but I believe that the future is bright, particularly with areas like high technology, pharmaceuticals, equipment related to water management, and of course agriculture. So I think the prospects are still very good.
There is obviously scope to further increase the trade ties between the two countries. Which are the areas where you think the two countries can have more trade cooperation? And what were the impediments earlier which were not letting it happen?
Well, certainly the growth of the Indian market, particularly for specialized goods, say for example medical equipment, in certain niches in which the Israelis are very strong, medical imaging for example, there is potential for increase in trade. On the Indian side, I think some of the manufactured goods which are being made in India, particularly after the Make in India thrust of the Prime Minister, as our sophistication increases, they will find a place in the Israeli market. That said, I think there is also a lot of cooperation in the services sector. We are both strong in the IT industry. Particularly, the Israelis are known for strengths in both software as well as hardware. and we are known more for the software side. Electronics is another area where I think our two countries have great potential for increased trade. That said, I would also not underestimate the potential for improvement in agricultural technology as an element in our trade, and of course growth of tourist trade is also one of great potential between our countries.
President of Israel said that Israel is ready to make in India and make with India. What's your take on this?
I think that's a very positive statement, a very positive development. Israel has, as I said, a number of very effective small startup companies, companies which have grown out of what they call their incubators, which have extremely advanced technology. They may not be able to invest very large sums on the scale of global multinationals, but certainly if they came here and invested in Indian companies in joint ventures that make with India, I think the sky is the limit for what can be achieved through this kind of collaboration.
Talking about the countering terrorism and tackling terrorism, the Israeli president said that he is on support to India on countering terrorism, and he made a statement saying terror is terror is terror is terror and is terror. Now, how do you look at this?
Well, Israel has certainly had a consistent policy of supporting India on counter-terrorism and in terms of development of capabilities for preventing terrorism as well as countering it. So I think there is much scope for our two countries to work together, and I think it is very, very positive that the Israeli president has emphasized that this cooperation will continue. It is not limited to only India's purchase of advanced equipment, whether of weaponry or surveillance equipment, but also in terms of training, joint training, sharing of certain critical kinds of intelligence, particularly in the areas like cybersecurity. So I think there is potential is great, and I think the emphasis on working together in the field of countering terrorism for India is certainly very important.
This kind of statement is kind of an indication or signal to our immediate neighbor across the border. A joint statement issued by Prime Minister Modi and the President.
It is known that the main source of terrorism afflicting India, the main challenge for terrorism in India comes from across the border, across our western border. So certainly this is a signal that yes, we will continue to work together against this particular source of threat of terrorism against India.
The international community must act with the resolve and determination to act against terror networks, states that also harbor them. So that is again an indication.
Yes, certainly I would agree with this. That's a very well crafted statement, because it suggests that you have to deal with state sponsors of terrorism as well as states which turn a blind eye or claim not to have control over their own territories. So yes, this is an area where the two countries have a strong joint interest.
The two countries also agreed to make defense ties more broad-based. Now, what does it mean?
I think it means two things. One, that Israeli technologies will be brought into the India as part of the defense manufacturing in India, rather than India being only a purchaser of Israeli equipment. You may well be aware that India-Israel defense relations have been on an upward trajectory for some time now. I happened to be ambassador in Israel during the Kargil conflict, when a quantum leap in our defense relations actually started. But I think now, with the emphasis being given by this government to manufacturing defense equipment in India, creating capabilities in R&D for defense equipment in India, I think there is a particular role which the Israeli defense industries and the Israeli government could play, because their R&D is very strong, their domestic manufacturing capabilities are extremely diverse as well as sophisticated. So I think they have a role to play in the development of the manufacturing sector of defense industries in India.
Mr. Modi thanked the visiting president for their support to India's case for UNC permanent chief. How do you look at this, sir?
Well, it's very welcome because it adds one more country who is supporting our candidature, and certainly it's confidence they are expressing in India's position and India's record, and how India is perceived globally.
Agreement in water resources management and agriculture. Now, how is it going to benefit us?
The early years, we gave a lot of emphasis to the potential for India-Israeli cooperation in the field of agriculture. In fact, one of the lessons I learnt when I was ambassador there so many years ago was the great interest being shown by the various states of India. In fact, by the time I reached there, 9 chief ministers had visited Israel. Now that's something unique. What is the interest? The interest is in developing agricultural capabilities, managing water resources, scarce water resources. Israel has been an example to the rest of the world in managing its water resources. So the research and development in these areas, water management and agriculture, has been one of the most important elements in our bilateral relationship. And I'm delighted that the Weizmann Institute and the other famous agricultural institutes of Israel continue to have Indian research workers, and a number of joint ventures in animal husbandry, in agriculture and in water management equipment have actually come up in India with Israeli technology.
Which are the other areas where you think the two countries can have cooperation for mutual benefit?
I think education, particularly in the higher education in technology and advanced science, is an area where the two countries can work together. Israel has some outstanding institutes of technology, for example, the Technion. That's, I think, certainly one area. New and pioneering forms of renewable energy. Israelis have done a lot of work. We have done tremendous work in our own country. So I think this is another area where we could work together. The scope is very large. We are already collaborating in space technology and areas of pharmaceuticals, life sciences. These are areas where I think there is scope for even more.
Overall, what is your take of the current visit? To put it in the perspective, what is your overall take of this current visit?
There is a consensus in both our countries that we need to work on this relationship and make sure it delivers for our peoples. I think this visit is a signal that is the direction we will go, and that's the direction Israel will go. It's a very positive development.
So would you recall some of the experiences you had as an envoy there in Israel?
Well, certainly I had great experiences during my 3.5 years in Israel. I did see Mr. Rivlin just once. He just became a Minister for Communications, and then, of course, I left. But I think the interesting thing was to discover the depth of the relationship, the role played by the Indian Jewish community in Israel. A fascinating recollection of going into events where large groups of Indians who had migrated from India wanted to actually hear me speaking either in Marathi or in Malayalam, because those are the two main languages of the Indian Jewish community there. Many of the young people, when they finish their military service, they take 6 months of holiday. And India has turned out to be one of their favorite destinations for their holiday. And they have good literary works have been written about this trend, and it was one of my great privileges to have people like Shimon Peres come and preside over our cultural events, talk about how in literature and in culture too, in addition to science, technology, defense and trade, we have a very, very fine, very profound relationship.
This visit of Israeli President augurs well furthering of the ties between the two countries?
Most certainly, I think it does.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on India-Israel bilateral relations. The participants were Ranjan Madhai, former Foreign Secretary, and Vineet Wahi, journalist. The program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. This program is also available on our website newsonair.nic.in. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.